Let's be completely honest for a second. How often do you find yourself just running all day long? You know the feeling. You're juggling back-to-back meetings, you're drowning in Slack messages, putting out fires left and right, and just pushing yourself to the absolute limit. And then you fall into bed, completely exhausted, knowing you fired off 50 emails and put out a dozen fires, but deep down, you've got this empty feeling. You kind of ask yourself, wait, what did I actually do today that really counts? We live in a world that is completely obsessed with doing more, faster, which really begs the ultimate question, why is it that so often our first things just aren't first? Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to our explainer on the paradigm-shifting concepts from Stephen R. Covey's absolute classic, First Things First. We are living in an era of unprecedented digital overload and constant connectivity, which, honestly, makes Covey's work way more relevant today than it ever was before. If you're tired of merely managing your time and you're ready to start truly leading your life, well, you're in exactly the right place. We're going to completely dismantle the traditional approach to time management and replace it with a principle-centered approach, one that focuses not on how fast you're going, but on where you are actually headed. So here is our roadmap for today. 1. The clock versus the compass. 2. The urgency addiction. 3. The time management matrix. 4. Fulfilling basic human needs. And finally, 5. Finding your true north. All right, let's jump straight into Section 1, the clock versus the compass, identifying the gap. For so many of us, there's this very real, very painful gap between what we deeply value in our hearts and how we actually spend our days. Our struggle to put first things first usually boils down to a fundamental conflict between two super powerful paradigms. We have the clock and we have the compass. Now, the clock represents efficiency, right? It's our commitments, our schedules, our rigid daily planners, basically what we do with our time. The compass, on the other hand, represents effectiveness. It's our vision, our deeply held values, our conscience, and our overall direction in life. So I want you to ask yourself this. If someone waved a magic wand right now and suddenly made you 20% more efficient, would that actually solve your deepest management concerns? Really think about it. Would getting to the wrong destination 20% faster actually make you happier? It's kind of like rapidly climbing a ladder only to realize, oh no, it's leaning against the wrong wall. For most of us, the answer is a resounding no. We don't need a better, faster clock. We desperately need a reliable compass. Moving right along to Section 2, the urgency addiction, why working faster fails. And this brilliantly illustrates the problem. If increasing our speed and efficiency is a deeply flawed solution, why on earth are we so drawn to it? Well, let's look at the evolution of the 3 generations of traditional time management. Generation 1 is all about basic reminders. Think of your classic sticky notes on the fridge or, a simple grocery list. Then Generation 2 introduces planning and preparation to increase efficiency. So this is your meticulously color-coded digital calendar. Generation 3 steps it up a notch by prioritizing and controlling. This is where you set long, medium, and short-range goals tied to specific values using complex systems, like Franklin planners or sprawling Notion boards. And hey, these generations have absolutely helped us become more productive cogs in the machine. But they have a fatal flaw. As this quote powerfully highlights, despite all these advanced planners and goal-setting systems, we are getting more done in less time. But there is still a gap between what is deeply important and what we spend our time on. So why is that? It's because the underlying paradigm of traditional time management is a total illusion of control. It assumes that if we just schedule our lives perfectly, we're finally going to find peace. But think about it. How many times have you perfectly color-coded your calendar only for one single phone call at 9 a.m. to blow the entire day up? We don't control the consequences of our actions, universal principles do. And by obsessing over the schedule, we end up prioritizing the urgent over the truly important. In fact, we become completely addicted to urgency. Think about the massive dopamine rush of handling a crisis, putting out a huge fire at work, or swooping in to save the day when a project is failing. It makes us feel validated, useful, and, well, important. But notice the symptoms we're dealing with here. This isn't a list from a time management book. This is actually drawn straight from recovery literature for chemical dependencies. Urgency addiction acts exactly the same way. It artificially eradicates our pain, it absorbs our attention, and it provides this false sense of self-worth based entirely on just being busy. Every time your phone buzzes with a notification, you get a hit. It's a self-destructive behavior that temporarily fills the void of our unmet needs, all while quietly destroying our long-term goals and our deepest relationships. Let's transition into Section 3, the time management matrix, shifting focus. So here is the core solution to breaking that addiction, the time management matrix.
Every single activity in your life falls into one of these four quadrants based on two factors: urgency and importance. Quadrant I is both urgent and important. These are your real crises, medical emergencies, pressing, hard deadlines. You absolutely have to handle them. But then we have Quadrant 3. This is the phantom quadrant. It's urgent, but not important. Think of unnecessary interruptions, pointless meetings, or answering everyone's quick questions on chat all day long. It's the quadrant of deception because the loud noise of urgency tricks us into thinking it actually matters. And what happens when we get totally burned out bouncing between quadrants I and 3 all day? We escape to Quadrant 4, not urgent and not important. Mindless doom scrolling on social media or binge watching television just to numb our exhausted brains. Now look at Quadrant 2, important but not urgent. This is the quadrant of quality. Deep work, long-range strategic planning, relationship building, personal development, and preventative maintenance on your health. Now, Quadrant 2 doesn't act on you. It doesn't shout at you like a ringing phone. You have to actively choose to step into it. But spending time here is literally the only way to shrink the number of crises in Quadrant I and finally escape the deception of Quadrant 3.
Which brings us to Section 4, fulfilling basic human needs, the real first things. So, the crucial point is, what exactly belongs in that magical Quadrant 2? Like, what are the actual first things we should be focusing on? Well, to build a truly effective life in Quadrant 2, we have to address these four fundamental human needs. To live is our physical need for health and economic security. To love is our social need for deep, meaningful relationships. To learn is our mental need to constantly grow and develop. And finally, to leave a legacy. This is our spiritual need for profound meaning, purpose, and contribution. Now, the magic happens when these aren't treated as separate, isolated compartments of your life. When they synergize, you achieve self-transcendence. For example, maintaining your physical health gives you the mental energy to learn, which then improves your emotional capacity and relationships, which ultimately empowers you to leave a lasting, positive impact on the world around you. It's all connected. All right, moving into our final section, Section 5, Finding Your True North, Principles versus Practices. Let's move to and see how this builds, because just identifying our needs isn't enough, right? We have to fulfill them in ways that actually align with reality. Imagine this vivid scenario. Say you own a farm. You forget to plant in the spring, you totally goof off all summer, and then suddenly fall arrives. Can you just stay up all night and cram a harvest? Can you just rip up the soil, throw in the seeds, aggressively water them, and expect bountiful crops by morning? Of course not. That's completely absurd. This is what Covey brilliantly calls the law of the farm. In a natural system, principles govern. You cannot cheat the process. You absolutely must have seasons of planting, cultivating, and caring. But in our modern social systems, whether at work or at school, we tend to operate on the law of the school. We think we can just cram before the final exam and get an A. We think we can fake a quick fix with a shiny new time management technique or by just working 20% faster. But think about applying the law of the school to your actual life. You cannot cram building deep trust in a marriage. You cannot cram developing a strong, empowered team at work over a single weekend retreat. In the long run, whether it's your health, your relationships, or your career, you just cannot fake the harvest. Quality of life only grows when it is deeply rooted in timeless principles. Thankfully, you already possess the exact tools required to align with those principles. As humans, we have 4 totally unique endowments to help us escape that urgency addiction. Think of self-awareness as the ability to notice when you're operating on autopilot, like catching yourself mindlessly scrolling on your phone. Conscience is that deep internal gut feeling telling you what is truly right. Independent will is your ability to actually put the phone down, rewrite your script, and act differently than your environment dictates. And creative imagination is your power to envision a better, much more meaningful evening instead. So how do you nurture these? Well, one of the absolute highest leverage Quadrant 2 activities you can do is keeping a personal journal. Writing deeply imprints the brain. It helps you analyze your daily motives, and it sharpens that inner voice so you can really listen and respond effectively. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that it brings us to the ultimate climax of this entire philosophy. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. Between the things that happen to you, the ringing phones, the urgent emails, the daily crises, and your reaction to them, there is a gap. And in that tiny space lies your absolute freedom. You are not a victim of the clock on the wall. You have the power to pause in that space, access those 4 human endowments, and choose an effective response based on your inner compass.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with one final provocative thought. If you stop chasing the illusion of efficiency and stop letting the addiction to urgency dictate your entire life, a whole new space opens up, the space of importance, the quadrant of quality. So, I ask you, what is the one deeply important, principle centered thing you will actively choose to do with your quadrant 2 time tomorrow? Take a moment, find your true north, and go make it happen.